Hello, and welcome to the Mommy Escape Time podcast. I'm Lauren. I'm a wife and a new mom. I came up with the idea of this podcast after struggling to find mommy groups around me when my son was born. I wanted a community of mothers I heard so many of my friends talk about when they had their children. This podcast is to help mothers like me that want a community of mothers to connect with when they have their free time. Together with my usual guest, Taryn, and other mothers, we will share our experiences, not our advice, through motherhood, and hopefully get some tips from you, the listeners. So come join us on the Mommy Escape Time podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Mommy Escape Time podcast. Today, Taryn is not with me, but I have a very special guest that I thought most of you would enjoy. It is my husband, Brian. Hello, Brian.
Hello, Lauren.
So Brian is on here today because he heard about my pregnancy and birth story with Taryn, and he thought he should have some input too about what his experience was during our pregnancy and birth. And I did leave out a few things. Obviously, I couldn't remember absolutely everything. So I'm sure that will come up today in our episode. So, and Brian also has his own podcast.
I do. Yep,
We are
I
a
just
podcasting family.
Yep, I just started a couple weeks ago. So a couple episodes in the books, a couple more rolling out within the next couple months, and should be fun.
What is the name of your podcast?
It is the Greater Southington Business Podcast. So I spotlight some local businesses or nonprofits and let them tell their story. Walk them through the timeline of the ideas and how they got started, right up through where they are now and what their future plans are for the business.
Very nice. Yes, and I even guest starred on that a little bit.
I wouldn't say guest starred, you guest appeared.
I guest spoked.
You spoke.
I smoked. Okay, so let's talk about my pregnancy.
Okay.
So
You mean our pregnancy?
No, you were not pregnant.
Okay. All right.
We're not one of those couples.
Okay.
It's very nice that people think that, but no. So let's talk about your experience during my pregnancy.
Okay.
When did it feel real to you that I was pregnant?
Probably when you told me. I don't think that's something you would joke or mislead about, so.
I would hope not. And what were your feelings when you first found out we were pregnant?
Well, I think it first went to, for whatever reason, the math and the timeline of that situation. So when you told me, so you start walking it forward about how far along you are and the expected, the due date and all that kind of stuff. So I just started fast forwarding through the upcoming months to see what those would look like.
So what does that mean? I don't understand.
So it's like, all right, so what is your due date? Okay, so how far along will you be around Christmas? How far, when would the shower be? When would that kind of stuff? So you just start kind of, Thanksgiving, you'll be here. Christmas here and that kind of stuff.
So I want to point out that when you first found out we were pregnant, the first thing you started to do was planning ahead.
Well, you're thinking about it because there's nothing else you really can do. There's nothing, you're not going to run out and buy a bunch of stuff. You're not going to tell a lot of people. There's not really much you can do.
Yes, I am the planner of the family, not so much you. So it's funny that's the first thing. But yeah. So let's go to our first doctor's appointment.
Okay, let's.
I don't think I ever talked about this.
Okay.
So we made an appointment. They make you go for an ultrasound. I think it was like 7-8 weeks, something around there, which is like odd how they actually calculate your pregnancy time, because like the first 3 weeks when you're not even pregnant, that counts as your first 3 weeks. So when you're actually figure out that you are pregnant, you're technically a month pregnant at that point. So it was about 3 weeks after we had found out, and we went up to my doctor, which was not nearby because around here doctors go where are affiliated with hospitals, and we kind of live in a weird area where we're either going to one area of the state or the other for doctors. So my doctor was closer to our hospital, and we went up. So what were you expecting from our first appointment?
Not really a whole lot. Just you want to hear that everything's going okay and everything is on track. Obviously, there's not too much they can tell you at that point. I mean, we had decided that we weren't gonna learn the gender ahead of time anyway, and obviously that's far too early. But we wanted to make sure that that was established in the record. So I remember us talking about that. That even though it wasn't time yet, let's make sure every time we go, we tell everybody that. So I remember that was a big deal. And I remember the doctor was he liked to joke around, so I guess his thing was to always
That was our
always
second time.
okay.
The
All right.
first time when we were in that tiny, tiny room.
Oh yeah, well yeah, I guess I don't even really count that because it wasn't really with a doctor, was it? I don't really.
No,
It
it was
wasn't
like a
the
technician.
yeah. So that was more of almost a confirmation appointment, if you will. And then after that, I think is when we started to tell people, right, or at least
Yeah, I mean,
immediate
we
family.
told immediate family after
Yeah.
that ultrasound. So that was like our 7-8 week mark.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So
Um,
yeah, so that was kind of a quick shot, I think, and then we went out for some dinner after that, or some noodles, I guess it was. And but yeah, I think of the first real doctor's appointment is the one with the doctor. So, but yeah, the
Yeah.
first appointment was pretty quick. It was like I think that place that's almost all they did there because it seemed like they kind of had a routine of getting those appointments in and out.
Yeah. So we did I would say the first appointment, I was very nervous. I wanted to hear one heartbeat. I was concerned that we were having twins. As I said on my previous show, I was very, very sick in the beginning. So, I mean, the first thought is that if you're that sick, typically it's twins. So I was just waiting to hear just the one heartbeat and just making sure that it was healthy. And then I don't think you came back. We had a 12-week appointment, and that was a longer ultrasound. And that was when he was jumping around. Well, we didn't know what it was at that point,
Right.
but the baby was jumping around a
Yep.
lot on the ultrasound.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that one, and then kind of looking forward to the next one, which was, what'd you say, another 3 or 4 weeks after that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was it like for you when I was sick all the time in the beginning?
Um, yeah, I don't really. There's not too much you can do because it's not like a flu or something like that where you're constantly looking for remedies or something to get better or even knowing, this will be gone in a week or this is whatever. So it's you're trying to be helpful, but at the same time you know that there's nothing you can do to fix it, which I think is tough. It's not like, let me draw a bath or a certain food or run down to CVS for this or that. There's not a whole lot you can do. So it's just to kind of wait around and be informed as much as you can and help out as much as possible. But it is kind of tough knowing that there's no one thing that you can do or no kind of remedy for it. It's just something you have to work through and wait it out.
And we didn't know how long it was going to last.
Right. You don't know if your whole pregnancy is going to be like this. I mean, obviously, some people are very sick early, and then they say that makes for an easier birth, or some people aren't sick at all, and then they have a difficult birth, and then some people, have a pretty good go of it the whole time, and some people struggle the whole time, so you don't really know.
Yeah. What What did you do all those times that I wasn't home?
When you weren't home? Where? Oh,
When I was in the hospital.
I don't know. I don't know. I guess to watch things and went to sleep. I don't know. It's not like I had raging keggers here or something. I don't know. I just tried to make sure, I guess, that I was healthy and wasn't going to get sick and just kind of keep doing my own thing and make sure that end was holding up all right.
And what did you want to accomplish at that once we got through the 12-week appointment, and that's kind of, they say, the safe time.
Right.
What were the things that you wanted to accomplish before the baby came?
I don't know. I mean, I think just doing some of the research on all the different products. Obviously, you've been through all of those on the podcast, but trying to figure out, okay, what are your immediate needs, when the baby comes home? And that's, obviously first and foremost. And then after that, what are the products? What are the things that you need, 3, 6, 12 months out? What have other people used? reading the reviews in different spots are always fun. So going through those on Amazon and other places, and just to see what's out there and what people are using and what people aren't using. The reviews are great, but any sort of firsthand knowledge from even from people, if it's 2 or 3 years old, it's almost not that helpful because the products change so much. But to get somebody who's pregnant within the last year or so, that's kind of very helpful. So to try to learn about those people and what they used, I think is important during those kind of 12 to 16 weeks or 12 to whatever that phase.
Yeah. Was there anything that I did that made you nervous? Like, why is she doing this when she's pregnant?
No, not really. I mean, we're always very active anyway, before and after. So you want to be, cognizant of that. Make sure you're not overdoing it, and you don't want to underdo it too if you're, trying to maintain your own healthy lifestyle through the pregnancy. So I think that's tough too for people that are active, that don't want to, overtrain, so to speak, or undertrain. They want to make sure that they're consulting with their doctor and listening to their body. So I think that was probably my biggest concern. Is she walking? Is she doing too many steps just to try to win the weekly challenge?
Which I always win.
Yeah, and the lifting and that kind of stuff. You want to make sure that that's appropriate for where you are in the pregnancy.
Yeah, they made me stop lifting like really early on.
Yeah.
Like I was actually surprised.
Yeah, and you kind of have to transition to more stretching and all that kind of stuff. And it's, you want to keep up with your current fitness level, but obviously you can't when your body's going through different things and gaining weight, which is inevitable and healthy, and you can't keep doing the same things you always did before.
And how did you feel when I brought in my awesome, amazing pregnancy pillow into the bed?
Oh, jeez. The fort?
So it was a pillow that was like U-shaped, that was as long as I was, right?
Yeah. That was, it was pretty big. It was all right. Whatever makes you comfortable, I guess. So it was fine. And I kind of wanted one after, but
you would use it sometimes after I get up. So.
It's if you're trying to maintain a position, I guess people who are trying to train themselves even to sleep a certain way, to sleep on their back or something like that, it could be good for them. So no, it was a little bit awkward at first, because it was like you were like, hey, where are you? But no, it was good. Whatever helps you sleep is fine. I mean, you're used to having like 7 or 8 pillows in the bed anyway, so it's not that much different.
Yeah. What about, we traveled a few times, like on a plane. Were you ever nervous on the planes with me, or?
No, not really. I think I was just more nervous about, in January, we did go to Milwaukee. So I was just more concerned about the weather and the cold, because it really hadn't gotten that cold here yet. So you just want to make sure if we're out walking around, if it was going to be icy or snowy or just the general cold. So I think I was a little bit more concerned. I wasn't necessarily concerned about the plane. Obviously, you're concerned about germs and all sorts of diseases and everything that can go into a flight, but you're generally pretty nervous about that anyway. So I don't think this time was that much different. You just want to make sure that if you're going through some sort of travel and planning it all out, you got to do that a few months ahead of time. So not knowing how you're going to feel at that point does make you a little bit nervous if you're, paying for flights and hotel rooms and not knowing if you'll even, if something comes up and you're not able to travel, or if you're just not up to it. But you were up to it, and we traveled, and it worked out fine.
Yeah, and not a lot of people are going to Milwaukee in January.
I don't know why not.
So the flights weren't always so full. But yeah, I remember flying was very hard, because it was very hard to not be in a reclined position. So like waiting on the plane before we had to take off was like excruciating, because I just sit up perfectly straight, and that was so hard for me. But that was like the hardest part, I would say. And
yeah, I think we were pretty excited about the trip, so
right.
we're trying not to, think anything sort of negative on it, and the trip was great.
Right. And I was about almost 7 months pregnant at that point, so that was like right near the end where I was allowed to fly.
Right.
So that was good. So then now we had to start getting ready for the actual birth, right?
Right.
We did have the shower. I didn't really mention that, but
yeah. Well, that was after Milwaukee, so.
Yeah. So we had the shower at our house, and that was kind of nice because it was easy. People just came to our house, and then everything was just here.
Right. You didn't have to worry about giving directions or a venue, or if there was any sort of weather issues. You didn't really, I mean, obviously people that traveled you did, but you didn't have that kind of secondary because you didn't have people coming to the house before and then having to get to a venue. So just to have it here and just selfishly us not needing to travel, I think was great.
Yeah, and I think if I had to do it over again, I almost would. I almost would not want brand new gifts for everything. If people had those types of gifts at their house and they were done with them,
Yeah.
I would have been gladly to take that too.
Yeah, well, I
So,
think we got a lot of that stuff later on,
yeah, we
especially
did.
from family, which I
Yeah,
would be kind of awkward to give used gifts and stuff, I guess, at a shower. Not that we would have cared,
yeah,
um,
that's not
but that stuff did trickle through later on.
right.
So
Like
especially
our
books.
yeah, and
And
our crib. I mean,
yeah,
so that was
yeah,
good.
yep.
But okay, so now we're getting ready for the imminent birth. And I probably made you go to a birthing class way earlier than we should have.
Yeah, I forgot everything by the time it came around. I had to relearn everything.
So, what's something that stuck out with you in the birthing class that you did remember or that you were like, okay,
Oh, I think, well, if we're talking just generally about the class, I think there was kind of a wide range of people there as far as how long they were in the pregnancy and different.
there were a lot of people with twins,
There
pregnant with
was a lot of
twins.
twins. Yep, yep. And there was a lot of people who were very close, and then there were some people who were a little bit farther away. I think, like you. So you had there were some oddball questions in there. I don't really remember, but I remember thinking there were some oddball stuff and saying, "Boy, these people are going to be parents." So there's a little bit of that, but. From the class itself, I think they did a good job. I mean, everything was pretty general, and they kind of told you nothing is ever going to be exactly the way you plan it anyway. So, yes, you want to have your birthing plan and you want to have that available, but don't freak out if everything is not exactly according to plans, which I think is good. That kind of relax people a little bit to you want to be prepared, but at the same time you want to be a little bit flexible too. So I think they did a good job of that.
Do you remember what they said about contractions and like when to leave for the hospital?
Oh, all the timing stuff.
Yeah.
I did know it at the time. I've
Right.
since forgotten it all. I moved that stuff to a part of the brain that I don't go back to.
I
But
just remember you being like, okay, we are leaving when you are at this point with this
yeah,
contraction.
yeah. Well,
I don't know,
they
it was
they
like
were pretty specific.
I think it was 511 when they're 5 minutes apart for 1 minute for 1 hour long.
Yeah.
That was it. And of course, my contractions were nothing like that. So you
Right.
know.
Right. Yeah, that stuff they were pretty specific about, and jumping probably ahead a little bit, but ours was on a Sunday, and it was during the course of a normal sort of day, so we weren't concerned about any traffic or weather issues or anything sort of overnight or anything like that. So
Right.
that helped.
And I just remember in the meeting they had said like as soon as you come you have to get an IV in, and I remember I talked to my doctor about that because I knew at that point that I definitely wanted to try a natural birth, and so I did not want any IV in me for as long as possible. I was going to hydrate myself, and that's what I was working on. And I remember them saying, she said, "Oh, you have to get an IV," and then she's like, "Well, if you don't want the IV, you just need your doctor's permission." And so that those were good things for me to hear, so I knew what to ask my doctor for. I don't want to say I had a long birthing plan. I really tried to pare it down to what were my absolute I don't want to say necessities, but if I could have my dream birth, what could my things be that I was allowed to have? So.
Right. I mean, the doctors and everything, they have their procedures, and they know what they're doing. They deliver a ton of babies. So you want to have your plan, but you don't want to come in there with like a how-to manual or
Right.
instructions that's going to, throw them off. So.
Right. And there were 3 doctors in my group, and 2 of them were very nice people, and the third one was the one that I wanted it to be, because I don't want to say she wasn't nice, but I needed someone who I couldn't like push over and be like, nope, I need that. I want to do that. And then the only other thing I think we did together before the birth was the tour of the hospital, right?
Yep, we did the tour. Yep.
Do you remember anything
I,
that stuck out there?
no, I think the key for me was just to, what happens when we get there, knowing that once we get in there, there's other people that know what to do. But it's like, all right, where do we go? Where do we park? What doors do we go in? And then it's like, not that I'm out, but at that point you get help. You're not gonna be stuck in a hallway or something somewhere. It's not like some of the ER experiences we've had. So, but yeah, the key for me was just, all right, where are we going? What's everything that's on me? Let me just learn that, and then everything else I can kind of learn, but I know I'll get help with that. So.
And what day of the week were these hospital tours?
Oh, I don't remember. It was a Sunday, wasn't it?
It was a Sunday,
Yeah.
a Sunday
Yeah.
afternoon. And I remember walking through there and being like, oh, the only thing I want is to not have this baby on a Sunday afternoon when everyone is going
All the
through for their
tours.
tour.
Yeah.
Because you go in and you see, like, they show you like the birthing room and then the room that you'll go to afterwards after you have the baby, which of course are significantly smaller. So it was just so funny because it was so quiet the day that we went there, and I was like, oh, it doesn't even sound like there's anyone here and everything like that. So I just remember being like, oh, I don't want to be one of the people that's giving birth when everyone's doing their tours.
But you were.
Of course. And I'm sure every single person heard me too.
Sunday had its advantages, though.
It did.
Yeah.
So then we had kind of like read through the Bradley Method book about giving birth, just so we knew. I mean, I don't want to say I had a very specific way, but I just wanted to know everything so I knew what to expect without an epidural. And of course I was always frightened that I would have a C-section, and not in a bad way, just knowing how much harder it is, that if you have the C-section, how much more help you might need around the house with the baby at that point. So I was concerned about that, but I tried not to think about it too much. And I kind of talked to my doctors about that beforehand, so I knew what to expect.
Right. And you had done a lot of research and training based on that. You did a lot of your bouncy ball and all that kind of stuff was designed to avoid that. So you never know if that's the reason why you didn't need it, but it certainly didn't hurt. So.
Right. And that was the other thing. I mean, you tried to help me work out, because I didn't want to work out alone at like past 7 months.
Yeah.
You got to be careful. So it was good that, we could just work out together, and maybe you were doing something much harder than I was doing, but I could just sit on the ball whenever and bounce on it.
Yeah.
So that was helpful.
Yeah. And he liked it. It helped kind of rest him too.
Yeah. He loved being bounced on that ball, except we didn't know it was a he.
Right.
So then it comes time for the birth. So I remember I kind of woke you up that morning.
Yeah. I think I woke up maybe a little bit later than regular time, but you were pretty sure that that day was the day and that we would be ready to roll. And then I was like, all right, so what time do we leave? Like, I don't know, like 10 or 11. And I wanted to go back to bed, but I didn't go back to bed. But no, I mean, we kind of packed up
You
normally.
packed up. I did not pack up.
Well, yeah, I mean, you had your bag, all your stuff all kind of set and ready to go. And
I did not have it all set, ready to go. I was packing it in between my contractions. I don't know why. That was the one thing I was like, oh, I'll just do that tomorrow. I'll do that tomorrow. And
yeah, you had an idea of what you wanted to bring, though.
I
so
had
it
an
wasn't-
idea, yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot clothes, though, for him.
Right. Yeah. But that, like I said, it's not like we were going to be delivering in a third world country or something. I mean,
Right.
at most we were 20 minutes away, 25 minutes. So not a huge deal. And
My mom was up, so we knew we could always send her around.
Yeah.
So.
And they have stores and gift shops, and people have forgotten toothbrushes at hospitals before. So,
Right.
yeah, we weren't too concerned about that.
Yeah, the only two things that I really wanted to have were my contacts and my glasses.
And your iPad.
And my iPad, oh yes. I think I'm more obsessed with my iPad than I am with my phone.
And all the appropriate chargers.
Yes.
Make sure all that. Sure.
And I remember I had gotten like a super long, I don't know, charger.
Yeah, because you never know where your
Because I
outlets
don't know where
are
my
gonna
outlet
be.
is. Yeah. So I would say we were at home for like 3 more hours, and it
Yeah.
was kind of hard because my contractions pretty much stayed the same. Like they were about 90 seconds long every 3 minutes, and that, I mean, that had been pretty much for like 5 hours. So I was getting a little nervous that I wasn't progressing at all. But then I was getting nervous that if it got worse faster, that I didn't want to be stuck in the car, because I always heard going in the car was the worst part.
Right. And we had kind of talked about ahead of time, depending again on the day and the time and all that, if we were going to do some walks here or just say, hey, you know what, let's just drive to the hospital. And if you're still not ready, let's walk a little bit around the neighborhood, if it's, midday or whatever, let's do that and then go in. So I think we got to the point where we said, you know what, let's just go, let's be safe, and then let's get there and see how we feel in 25 half an hour, and then if we need to walk around a little bit outside, we'll do that. If we need to go in, we'll do that too. But let's just get there and check that box and see what's next.
Yeah. So we called the doctor on the way to the hospital. Did we call my mom? I can't even
No,
remember.
we were under strict instructions
yeah.
to not call your mom yet.
Yes,
we called my mother because if she was going to come, it was a bit of a travel, so we figured that was in there. And I don't know, maybe we called my sisters too.
Yeah, because one of your sisters ended up coming, so I think we must have told her because she was there.
Yeah.
So we we drove to the hospital, and on the way is when we decided the names, if it was a boy or a girl.
Yeah, at that point, I hadn't really had a feeling one way or another, and then on the drive up there, I was absolutely 100% convinced it was a girl. So we went through all the girl names, first names, middle names. We said them over and over, but yeah, I was 100% sure it was a girl.
Yeah, and I was still obviously hoping it was a boy. And mostly because I wanted to prove everyone wrong who was like, oh, you're so sick, it must be a girl. Which is such a weird reason to want to hope for a boy. But yeah, so we got to the hospital, and I would say it wasn't that bad for me. I actually had the least amount of contractions, and I was sitting, and I was almost, I don't want to say it was like almost completely laying down flat, but I was reclined quite a bit in the car. Yeah. And of course I had the heated seat on. Yeah. Because I was obsessed with heated seats. And then we got to the hospital, and we had to park in the parking garage. And I would say it probably took me 20 minutes from the parking garage to get upstairs, because we had to keep stopping.
Right, and you didn't want me to drop you off. You wanted to park and then.
I did not want to be apart from you for like 1 minute. And I remember you carried a bunch of stuff up. And I remember, of course, when we walk in, there's like the person that's like, oh, do you want a wheelchair? And I was like, no. And I feel like he just kept following me. Yeah. I don't know if he did or not, but it just always felt like there was someone behind me like, do you want to sit? Do you want to sit? Do you want to sit? And then we get upstairs, and they say, oh, you're all pre-registered. We just need you to sign these 8 different forms. And this is a form about this. And I was like, oh my gosh. I go, this is horrible. Because my contractions were so bad at that point. And I signed the paperwork, and then they're like, okay, well, now we're going to bring you into this triage room to see if you're even going to stay. And I don't remember exactly what happened, but there kept being like more different doctors, and they couldn't decide who was going to check to see if I was staying. And finally they were like, well, you have to get on the bed. And of course it was like during this, like I kept having these double contractions where it would like stop for 10 seconds and then come on again for another 2 minutes. So I did finally get up, and I was about 5 centimeters, which is where I wanted to be. So they said I could stay. And then they moved us into an actual room. And then I don't really understand. I don't really remember what happened.
Well, and then they were looking for different equipment. Some equipment wasn't working, and it was, I think it was sort of a mobile computer unit that was going to allow you to walk around, because that was one of the things you insisted on, that was important to you, to be up and moving around, and instead you ended up being attached, tethered, leashed to a machine that was less mobile. It was more stationary. So you had 3 or 4 foot radius in which you could walk. So that was a little bit frustrating, because we had an older attendant. So her trying to fix the technology of the mobile unit just was not a good fit.
Right. And then she made a comment about my breathing. And it was just very hard because as a runner, you have a very specific like breathing pattern. Like, you know how to keep your breathing low so your blood pressure doesn't like rise too much, you know, and you can sustain for long periods of time. And she kept trying to tell me that I was doing it wrong. And so when I tried her method, I felt like I was going to pass out. So then she was like, "Oh, well, I can get you a ball." And I was like, "Please, just go get the ball." So she comes back with this ball. I don't even think it came up past my calves, maybe.
No, I think maybe it was a tennis ball or something that was not comfortable to bounce on. That's for sure.
No, I had used one that came up probably like mid thigh. That was what I had been using. And she told me that one that was at my calf was by far the largest one they had. So she was about that size. So that's probably why. And then she actually just left and we got a new nurse, which I think was kind of where I turned the corner and I was okay.
Yeah, a little shift change action there.
Right. But in between, my mom did show up. And your sister had called to say that she was on her way.
Right.
And this is the time. My mom told me this afterwards. She goes, "Yeah, I was sitting out in the waiting room." And she's like, "I think about 6 or 7 tour groups came through in the time that I was sitting there." I was like, "Oh, great." So everyone taking the hospital tour. It felt like I was the only person there.
Yeah, I don't think there
we
were
did
many
not
other
hear
deliveries that day.
Yeah, I did not hear another person.
No.
I'm not sure. I mean, I know I was loud. I mean, I know I was screaming at parts. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I remember them asking me if I was starting to push, and I was like, because I was walking, and I was like, I don't know. And it was kind of like one of those questions where I'm like, you're supposed to know, you're the doctor. And so they came in to check me and they said, "Nope, we're going to start pushing." And I was horrible at pushing, but my nurse really coached me through that part really well. She was really good. And I think I pushed for like a little over an hour.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It didn't, I mean,
it didn't
to
feel
me,
like that long.
Well, no, I didn't want to say
No.
that, but it didn't feel like an hour.
No, it definitely didn't. Like I had to remember I was so nervous that it was going to be like 4 hours of pushing because I had a friend that had gone through that. And I was so nervous about that. And it worked out and he came out and they laid him on me and they said, "It's a boy."
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we had my doctor, a resident, and the nurse. And the resident was like so excited. I don't think she had ever seen a birth where people didn't know what they were having or something like that.
And I don't think she had seen a birth without the epidural either. So I think I think the combination of those two were a big deal for her. So
yeah, so that was good. So Brian went out to tell my mom. Was your sister there at the time?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That the baby was there, but he would not say if it was a boy or a girl. And then they came in.
Yeah, and then we told them the name.
Yes.
And then they just assumed it was a boy because of the name. They were correct. And and we took a couple awful pictures of Luke that we will use again as blackmail. We'll use at his graduation or wedding or something. But after he came out and looked around a little bit, he was actually pretty quiet.
Yeah, he was pretty quiet.
That was the initial burst of crying, and then I think maybe once he warmed up a little bit and.
Right,
he was
and
good.
he was back. Yeah, he was back like attached to me. I think he was better that way. And then we got moved into. I feel like it was only like an hour later, and then we got moved into another room.
Yeah, after the birth, they didn't. Once they did all the tests with him, it was like you're out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like a shock because you're in this like really nice open room, and there's all this space, and there were 5 with Luke. In the room, and then you go to this like tiny room.
Yeah. But you did have a single, which is nice.
I did have a single. Yeah.
Some people don't, and
and
there was a chair that was a fold out, and we had the room was nice. It wasn't huge, but it was fine. I mean,
it worked for us.
Yeah, I mean,
it was just tough with more than Yumi and the baby.
Right.
In the room.
Right.
So, and then. I mean, he was pretty good. He didn't cry really, that night at all.
No, I mean, Yeah, I mean, they'd come in and check on him, and I think they had some tests and stuff to do. But
Right.
I think, like we said before, having it like normal as part of the normal day, I think helped definitely him a little bit, but us too. I mean, we just kind of went to bed at like 9 or 10 o'clock, like we always
Regular
do,
time,
and
yeah.
yeah, it was just kind of stayed in the rhythm. So
Yeah, and we arrived at the hospital at like 10 a.m. We had him around 3:15,
hmm
and then
yeah,
we were in the other room by
yeah,
5:30ish.
yeah, and
So
had dinner normal time, and
right.
kind of got ready for bed. So it helped keep us a little bit fresher.
Right. So that was good.
Yeah, yeah.
Any
The first,
other?
no, I mean the first night I stayed there, and the second night I chose not to because a little bit on the taller side, and they had a nice little fold out chair, but it's anybody over 6 feet was a bit of a challenge. So
And
um,
you went home to get things,
yeah, I had a
and there
couple
was
things to get, and
right, and just to make sure everything was all set up
right,
for when we came home.
yeah,
Not that we weren't expecting the pregnancy, but or the birth,
right,
but still, it was just there's always that last minute few things that you can
yeah,
do.
yeah,
So that was good.
yep.
Any other thoughts? Any
No, I
about a
think
pregnancy or
no, I think that's pretty good. I mean, we talked
were
a
you
little
ever
bit about your.
scared during the birthing part?
No, I really wasn't because there was nothing from the doctors that gave any sort of indication. It's not like they called in a whole other fleet of doctors or went out in the hallway and
Right.
whispered to each other or anything like that. Everybody was pretty.
Did you
All the
think
indications were that everything was okay and it was normal.
Did you think I was going to be able to do it without the epidural?
Yeah, because I was under instructions, under no circumstances to let them give you one. So you had to do it without the epidural.
Yeah,
But,
I think I turned to you at one point and I was like, "I want the epidural," and you just looked at me and you're like, "Really?"
no, and it was too late anyway. He
I
was
know.
he's like halfway out. It's like, no, you can't do that now. That's like out. But yeah, I'm sure in other episodes you talked about managing guests and managing family and stuff too. But
No,
I
I
think that
never
was
did.
oh okay. Well, that's a whole nother show for you. But yeah, I mean, my mom was a nurse and been in hospitals, and she had a long drive and whatever. So she chose to come later in the week, and then your mother was obviously there, but she did a good job of when to come in and when to, she wasn't a pain at all. She didn't try to stay overnight, and she wasn't crazy at all the next couple days about bringing things or trying to be there the whole time. So
Right.
yeah, so
And
I
ironic, like I was like, "Oh, I'm not going to need any of your help from
right.
anyone," and then I was like, "I need everyone's help."
Yeah, yeah, and you told friends to just not bother with the hospital, and,
Oh
and
yeah.
that helped. So we didn't have guests or visitors or people sending a bunch of nonsense or anything like that. We didn't have a bunch of flowers to take home or people sending food or anything like that. So I
Yeah.
think that worked out well.
Yeah, I did not want anyone at the hospital.
No, no,
I
and,
I
and we
mean,
knew you.
immediate family fine, but
Right, and
yeah.
we knew you were, afterwards that you weren't going to have any sort of extended stay anyway, so there was
Right.
really no need for people to come to.
Yeah, I would have left after the first day if I had been able to.
Yeah,
I would have,
yeah,
because we got interrupted a lot.
it did. Yep, yeah.
Yeah. So
Right, and trying to sell us the different photography packages and all that
yeah,
stuff. I mean, there's some weird things that go on there. They do come in and out a lot, but
yeah. There's a book reading program and
yeah, yeah.
yeah. And do you want to be part
Mothers
of these
groups
mothers
and
groups? Yeah.
yeah,
And like all good things, but nothing near where we actually lived. Like all I could think about was you want me to drive with this tiny child
yeah.
all of a sudden, like 45 minutes away to go to these things.
Right, and no matter how good a shape somebody's in, they're not making rational decisions as to whether they want to join a mother's group the third Wednesday of every month. It's like nobody's thinking about that right now. So,
No.
so that stuff's a little bit tough. But I guess they have to introduce it,
Right.
and the charities that are providing aid and state programs and things like that, they have to get their message out. So there's
Right.
really no other way to do it.
Yeah. So, but anything else? Any advice for any dads out there that have to go through?
Oh gosh, that might even be a whole nother episode. But, no, I don't think so. I mean, if you're, hopefully you're lucky enough to have everything be fairly smooth. But if it isn't, you just have to you're just kind of along for the ride. Just help out where you can and stick to the program. It's not your program, but you got to stick to it anyway. So that's kind of the deal.
Yeah, and you knew what I wanted.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah, a boy.
Yeah, a boy, but yeah, of course. But you knew what I wanted in my birth plan, and you knew you had to make decisions
Yeah.
because I was not going to be the rational one at that point.
Right, and you started researching it early on, so it wasn't, and even probably before you were pregnant, you looked into a lot of this stuff. So it's not like, the last month or last week you kind of scrambled. It was
Right.
the process and the plan was evolving, and we had conversations around it. So we knew not just what we were doing, but why we were doing it, and looked at other options. So yeah, I think we were on the same page for all that.
Yeah. So, all right. Any last thoughts?
I just did last thought. You already asked
You
me
just
that.
did last thoughts. Okay. Well, thank you, Brian,
All
for
right.
coming on the podcast.
You were welcome. You act like I had a choice.
You had a total choice.
Well, we'll do more. We uncovered some other episodes we could
Yeah. What are
potentially
some
do.
of the other episodes?
I forgot. You'll have to rewind, but
I'll have to
no, we could do a
rewind.
whole a daddy advice thing, or even not even just with me, but how to manage family, extended family, and how to manage guests and that kind of stuff might be a good episode for you.
All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you for listening to the Mommy Escape Time podcast. Thank you, Brian, for coming on.
You're welcome.
I'm sure the viewers or listeners can't wait to hear you on again. And you could follow us on social media at Mommy Escape Time on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And of course, you could check out our website to see our episodes whenever you have a free time. And we are in iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts. So thank you. Anytime you want to leave reviews, of course, that's good too. And we will hear from you guys next time on the Mommy Escape Time podcast. Bye.